Hey, this is Justin with DayTradeTheMarkets.com on New Year's Day 2013. Want to wish everyone a happy new year, first of all. And secondly, I wanted to talk about some ideas to consider for the new year of your trading, and then I want to show you or offer an idea for an experiment you could try over the next 20 or so trades. A couple things I was thinking about that could be helpful as you get into a new year. It's a fresh beginning. Think about this before you take a trade. Number one, can you clearly define what your edge is? Okay, and if you can't, you need to, I would recommend not trading until you can clearly define what your edge is. What's your competitive advantage? Trading is competitive. Trading is challenging. Trading is it's not for the faint of heart. And if you don't have an edge, if you don't have a competitive advantage, the market is going to eat you up. So I would first, before you take one trade in 2013, make sure that you can clearly define what your edge is. Okay, if you can't, send me an email, I can help, but that's first and foremost. Secondly, it's one thing to know what your edge is. It's another thing to be able to clearly define your edge and make sure that you do that before you take any trade. So one thing you can think about is, do you do that? Before you take any trade, do you know why you're taking it? Do you have a clearly defined reason or logic or rule set that you know provides you with an edge, with an advantage, and are you able to do that and define that before taking each trade? If not, I would highly recommend trying to get into that habit, and I'm going to show you an experiment that can help with that. Just as importantly, do you avoid taking trades that don't have a clearly defined edge? I know that it's sometimes when we're trading, it's easy to get caught up in how we're doing on that particular day, or the result we want, or we haven't had the day we want, or we want to make money today. Whatever the case may be, sometimes we take impulse trades, sometimes we take trades off of just gut instinct or gut feel, and it's just very important, certainly in our opinion, that you are able and develop the skill to avoid taking trades, to have the discipline to pass on trades where you can't clearly define what your edge is. Because you can get lucky on a trade. You can take a trade where you can't really clearly define your edge and get lucky, but that's not sustainable. That's not gonna. If you took that trade 100 times, it's a coin flip. Okay, so it's not. Don't celebrate when you take a trade that wins when you haven't clearly defined your edge. Celebrate when you take a trade that you can clearly define an edge, whether it wins or loses, and hopefully that makes sense. And that kind of feeds into the next idea, which is, do you tend to focus on your decision making, in other words, your process, or do you tend to focus on your results or the money? And again, in other words, do you make different decisions whether you're up or down for the day? Do you make different decisions based on what happened on the last trade? In other words, do you make a different decision when you're profitable on a trade or when a trade's underwater a little bit? In other words, do you focus on what the result is going to be, or do you focus on the process, making the best decision? Again, if you can learn to focus on the process, focus on your decisions, win or lose on a particular trade, that's sustainable. That's trading with an edge. And to kind of illustrate something, I'd like to offer an idea, kind of a New Year's resolution, if you will, or a challenge, to try the following experiment, maybe over your next 20 trades, maybe next 10 trades. Ideally, do this for every trade you take this year, but just as an experiment, try this over your next 20 trades or so. And so this is an example of the journal that I use. I print this out on a piece of paper and put this on. I have about 3 of these little illustrations on a piece of paper, and I print out a bunch of them. I actually like doing it on paper. You could certainly do it on a Word document or on a spreadsheet if you like. But the things that I like to focus on every trade is, you want to have a space for the trade details. So was it long or short? What time did you take the trade? What was the price that you entered? How many contracts did you trade? And then what was the monetary result? So there's just kind of the details there. That's important to know. But more importantly, you want to get in the habit of practicing defining your edge. So in other words, and the way I like to do it, and it's pretty simple with the method that we use in the software that we talk about, is we have all these various pieces of evidence, aggression bars and support resistance zones and the filter and decelerations and so forth. And so it's pretty easy to kind of do a checklist. What is the evidence for taking this potential trade that I'm thinking about? What's the evidence against? Okay. Now it doesn't matter if you're using the DayTradeTheMarkets software and you use that. It doesn't, or if you're using a completely different method. You need to be able on every trade to get in the habit of defining what the edge is. In other words, imagine there's someone sitting next to you when you're taking a trade. Can you explain to them in 10, 20 seconds why you're taking this trade. If you couldn't explain that to somebody, you probably shouldn't take the trade. Okay? So you need to be able to define your edge. And that could be if you're taking a trade and you're looking at, it doesn't have to be just aggression bars or support resistance zones. If you look at Fibonacci's or market profiles or oscillators or whatever you look at, whatever you use to define your edge, can you make a case for taking this trade? And does the case for taking the trade outweigh the case against taking the trade? If so, you can define your edge and you've done your job. You have an edge if you can define it. Next, you want to talk about your reason for exiting the trade. Maybe you have a systematic way of exiting, and that's very simple. Maybe you get stopped out. But I think it's really important, and it's often overlooked with a lot of traders as to why we get out of trades. So many of us, will either bail out on a losing trade too soon, not give it enough room, or more commonly, we'll let a loss run a little too much. Or, we'll get up a few ticks and just be scared that it's going to turn against us and bail out of a trade when there's no evidence for getting out of a trade. Okay, so again, the key is, what's your reason? Can you define the reason? Not whether it worked or didn't work, but can you define the reason that you got out of the trade? Okay, that's extremely important. Next, this is a yes or no question. Were you on this particular trade, were you focused on your process and your decision making, or were you focused on the money? Were you focused on the results? Again, what happens on a trade here and there is not really important. What is important is, did you follow your process? Were you able to define your edge? Did you make a trade entry decision based on sound reasoning? Did you make a trade exit decision based on sound reasoning? If you did that, then you're focused on process. Okay? There's a big difference, and this is subtle, but I promise you, if you can, here's another challenge for you. If you can, sometimes when I practice, I like to play golf. Sometimes when I practice putting, I'll say, okay, I'm not going to leave until I hit five footers in a row. Okay, and that's not as easy as it might sound, but if you can do that exercise, you get a lot better at putting. It's the same thing here. Maybe make a rule for yourself that you are going to, over the next 5 trades or the next 10 trades, you are not going to worry one iota about what your result is. You're going to define success on, did you follow your process? Did you define your edge? If you can do that and get in the habit of doing that, it's uncomfortable. Believe me, it's uncomfortable. But if you can get in the habit of not focusing on the money, not focusing on the result of the trade, but instead focusing on why you made the decision that you made, win or lose, and if you can do that, say 5 in a row or 10 in a row, you're going to find that your trading just grows by leaps and bounds. It might not sound like it's that big of a deal, but it really is. So hopefully you'll take that to heart and maybe try that challenge if you will. And last, on my trading journal, I like to put review or lesson. And this is where I'll celebrate if I did focus on my process, focus on a good decision. Again, I don't celebrate the result. I celebrate if it's a good decision, if the logic made sense, or if I've made a mistake, or there's something I could have learned from, or something I want to maybe test or look into more, I'll note that as well. And again, you don't have to use this format. I've found this format to work well for me. What's most important is that you have some way of tracking, and I personally like to do kind of pen on paper. I feel like it's, and I keep track of it. You could certainly do it on a spreadsheet, but it's most important, can you define why you did what you did? It's the idea of getting better, practicing becoming a better decision maker. Not just taking trades, but practicing becoming a better decision maker. And if you can do that, just try this on the next 20 trades, or try to do 5 in a row that are just process focused, where you celebrate the process, whether it made money or lost money. If you can do that, I think you're going to turn a corner in 2013, or at least improve your results, because it's all about defining an edge and then being able to exploit that edge when the situation arises. So hopefully you found this helpful. It's just kind of my personal challenge or suggestion that you try this with a new year, fresh start. Give it a shot. I think after 10 or 20 trades, you'll see that you're starting to become more focused on that decision-making process. And again, as a trader, that's what you are. You're a decision maker, and the better you get at making decisions, the better your results are going to be. So hopefully that helps. Again, Happy New Year to everyone, and looking forward to a great year, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.